We are just days away from Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and then a week away from New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. And so many folks are worried that they are going to get COVID during the holidays, because if you're like me, you've been in some of those airports and you see that people are not wearing masks for the most part. And you're hearing these reports of hospitals filling up with folks with a respiratory condition. Today, we are talking to our experts about how to stay healthy during the holidays, everything you need to know about keeping yourself safe while at home and also while you are traveling. We're going to talk about traveling woes and how to have safe travels during the holiday season. All of that is coming up next.
Live from Los Angeles, this is the Special Report with Areva Martin.
I'm super excited today to be sitting down with Dr. Michael Roizen. He is the Chief Wellness Officer at Cleveland Clinic. He's emeritus in that position. He's also the chief visionary of the Great Age Reboot. He is a New York Times bestseller of multiple books, and he is a friend of the show, and I'm so happy to see Dr. Roizen right before the holidays. Good morning, Dr. Roizen.
Good morning. It's great to see you, Areva.
Okay.
So thank you.
You have something going on right there. We can see it with your shirt and your...
Right, I look like I'm on Saturday Night Live, right? But I had a rotator cuff surgery. I was doing my usual exercises, lifting the same amount of weight, but I didn't warm up. And that's the message. When you do things over the holidays, don't skip all the things you normally do. I tore, believe it or not, I completely tore 3 of the 4 rotator cuff muscles and a half tear on the 4th one. And so I have now little Teflon screws. They're not Teflon, they're actually fiber screws. The surgeon says you could, there are 13 of them to keep everything tacked down, but he says any one of them he could pick me up by. That's how strong they are in the bone. So I'm supposed to keep my arm in this position on the sling for 6 weeks, and I'm going to be a good patient.
So when you say warm up, do you mean like just doing some light, like, stretching, or what do you mean by warming up?
Normally what I do, I do a lighter weight on the same exercises. I do 16 resistance exercises each time I do it, twice a week. I've done the same exact exercises with the same exact weight for, I think, 27 or 28 years now, and twice a week. I like it. And unfortunately, I was running late, so I did a chest press, my same weight I usually use. I'm not that strong. I use 45 pounds in both hands. And I heard this, as I was lifting, I heard this horrible ripping sound. It is literally, you hear this sound and you say, if you're a physician, and probably even if you aren't, you probably know you've ripped something. It was one of the worst sounds I could have heard. But so I had one of the great surgeons, Eric Raconte.
Hold on, so this warm up, your warm up, you would have done that like with a 10-pound before you got to the 45?
That's exactly what I use. So okay. That's right. And so your muscle gets warmed up on that and is ready to lift a bigger weight.
So start light. That's the message here. Start with a lighter weight or lighter resistance, and then work your way up to the heavier weight or the more.
Well, and it is, do your usual thing. Don't skip, because it's the holidays. Don't say, oh, I'm giving myself a buy on that, or I'm running late, I'm going to do it fast. You got to do it regular.
Stick to the routine. All right, it is the holiday, Dr. Roizen. Lots of folks are masking. A lot of folks are not masking. And people are afraid about getting sick. There's COVID, there's the flu, there's this RSV, respiratory virus that's filling up hospital beds. So tell us, what do we need to do to keep ourselves well and also help keep other people in our environment well?
Well, as you said, a mask is key if you're going to do something in a group that you don't know. But if you're with your family and all of you have been relatively well, then there really are what I call four rules. One is we don't eat well over the holidays, so my rules are NASH. Nutrition, so get a multivitamin because we aren't getting the right things. A is baby aspirin. We know that both COVID and the flu cause a very inflammatory state, so this helps you cover that. The third is the S, sleep. I don't know if you can see the pillow. And the fourth is hydrate. So the keys are really hydrate well, you get good nutrition, and when you don't, make sure you take that multivitamin. And then, if you will, the baby aspirin, again, check with your physician to make sure everything I'm saying doesn't contradict with what other things you have, but it is a baby aspirin, half glass of warm water before and after. 70% of the side effects of aspirin are landing on your stomach lining, so make sure it lands in the warm water.
And so, Dr. Roizen, what is that aspirin going to do?
It decreases the inflammation. It really has, if you will, three benefits. One benefit is we know that COVID and the flu are associated with increased clotting, increased pulmonary emboli, especially in women, and a increased, if you will, heart attacks and strokes due to that increased clotting and the increased inflammatory state. So aspirin decreases the clotting risk and decreases the inflammatory state. It does both of those. So even if you're getting, when I get a vaccine, if you will, whether it's COVID or whether it's my every 10-year DPT, I take aspirin with it to decrease my risk of an inflammatory reaction with it. So it doesn't decrease the immune response, it does decrease the inflammatory response. So that's why I do that. And then hydration is absolutely key.
How much hydration, how much water should we be drinking every day?
Well, no one has the right answer for that. We normally say that you should drink your weight in ounces of water. So if you're 130 pounds, 130 ounces of water. That's an awful lot. Most of us don't get that much, but try and get that much is what we say during the flu season.
And then that sleep, which is so hard for so many of us to get that. Oh, sleep. Oh, such a problem for me with sleep. But how much sleep, in theory, should I be getting?
Well, we all sacrifice sleep, if you will, because we got so much to do. One of the keys is always getting up at the same time. So if you always get up at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m., this is a test question, Areva. What is the average waking time in America?
I'd say 7.
It's 5:43.
Oh my God. 5:43 in the morning?
Yes.
Wow.
And so that's the average waking. So if you get up at 5:45.
What's the average bedtime? What time are people going to bed if they're getting up at 5:43?
Well, that's the problem. We're sacrificing sleep. So, but always try and get at least 6.5. The goal is 6.5 to 8.5 hours of sleep a night. Now, I am horrible on that. I'm very good at it now. But early on, when I didn't know the data, before I knew the data, I would go to get 4.5 to 5.5 hours a night because we worked and we were productive.
How did you increase it? How did you go from that 4 to 5, which is my situation, to that 6 to 8?
I just started I always get up at the same time, but I started to say, hey, you got to do a subtraction problem, right? or an addition problem. And so you say, when do I go to bed if I need 6.5 or 8? And it's an amazing thing. one of my coworkers, a Dr. Rich Lang here at the Cleveland Clinic, started going to bed an hour earlier, and he said how much better he felt. So I started doing it, and it worked for me as well. So
what are the impacts on your body, like the consequences of not getting sleep? Maybe if we knew more about that, we'd be better about it.
Well, sleep, sex, and food, those drives share the same neurons. So if you don't have enough sleep, you tend to get addicted to sugary food. So one of the things that we do is we try and make up that responsiveness of our neurons by eating more sugar or getting addicted to sex. But it is the sugar that is obviously the real problem, if you will. So it is that addiction center. And obviously, if you eat close to bedtime, as many people do, you end up gaining weight. So that's part of my New Year's resolutions for everybody, what to do.
Okay, Dr. Royce, I know you have 4 New Year's resolutions. One is don't eat late and don't eat right before bed. What are your other resolutions?
Well, actually, there are 4 P's. So that one is prance after the meal, meaning walk after the meal. Another one is, if you will, posse more. That is, instead of staying by isolated as many people do, or with just 1 or 2 people, call your friends, tell them how much you love them, how much you appreciate what they've done. So I've now taken to every Saturday and Sunday, I call 6 to 8 friends as a posse more. So posse more, prance after dinner. The third is play more. That is, with your friends, find something you love to do with them and play more. And the fourth is protein more. As we get older, we need more protein. When you're young, more protein seems to age you. But as you get over the age of 50, you need more protein. That is, per kilogram of weight. So divide your weight by 2. So if you're 130 pounds, you're 65 kilos, you should get 65 grams of protein is what we say. But we're now saying maybe as much as 1.6 times as much as that, or maybe about 100 grams of protein for a 130 pound person. So we know that protein is very important at maintaining muscle and bone and organ function as we get older.
What about those folks who've been told by their doctors to go to plant-based diets? How are they to get that protein that you just identified?
So a plant-based diet, you've got to get protein from the plants, and you can. So chia seeds, quinoa, those are both complete proteins. They have all the essential amino acids. And then nuts and seeds are high in protein. If they are plant-based and can have egg whites and salmon, I modify plant-based to have egg whites, ocean trout, and salmon, and those are very high in protein. I was amazed at how little protein, when I looked at the data, how little protein. I'm basically plant-based plus salmon. But if you don't work at it, if you don't really say, you're not getting enough protein. So, for example, one salmon burger might be 20 grams. Well, to get 100 grams, you got to have 5 of those in a day. Now, on the other hand, egg white, with a 5 egg white omelet, you get 50 grams of protein on a 5 egg white omelet. So you can do it. But it does.
I want to go through those P's again. The P first is prance, and that's like move around after dinner, right?
Right. Prance after dinner, walk after dinner.
Posse. P, the second is posse. Posse more, you said. Get together with friends more.
Right, and that's pretty normal for women, but for men, it isn't as usual. So get your boyfriend or husband or significant other to posse more.
And then when they get with that posse, they should play more. You said play more, have more fun, go out and do more entertaining things.
That's exactly right. And the fourth is protein more.
Okay, all good things to do going into 2023. Let me ask you about the Great Age Reboot. I know you wrote this amazing book. You run a book tour talking about it. How are things going? Tell us anything new that we should be thinking about as we're going to be, moving towards that 120, 130-year mark.
Well, you don't have. You're gonna be younger, Areva. So I don't know how young you are now, but you're going to get even younger. So think of yourself as when you're 90, you're going to be 40. It's with an 80% probability, and the scientific discoveries keep coming. So we don't expect in animal models. We don't expect, and they're all moving. All these 14 areas of research into aging mechanisms are moving into human. So you want to do it. We have an app to help people prepare for it so they stay as young as possible, and that is, the app is the Reboot Your Age app at greatagereboot.com or at the Apple or Google Play Store. So that's an app. There's a free trial with it, but the point is you are a genetic engineer. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you prance after dinner, for example, you turn on a gene in your muscle that produces a small protein called arisen. It goes to the brain and it turns on another gene called that makes brain-derived neurotrophic growth factor that makes your memory center bigger. So we know that. Now, what we've learned, in fact, is people who are physically active, for example, diabetics who get physically active turn on more than 50 genes that were off that help them get rid of type 2 diabetes and turn off some inflammatory genes. So what we've learned in the last couple months is how strong your lifestyle choices are. And that's one of the reasons you don't want to quit your good habits and lose your good habits during the holidays and just start over again in January. No, keep them going because they're really important at changing how young you will be and how prepared you'll be for the reboot.
We know that, the holiday dinners can be quite tempting for people and can be really a difficult time for a lot of people. Lots of foods that they don't normally eat are on those big, dinner tables. What advice do you have for people who are going to visit relatives or be out at a restaurant and they're going to get, tempted by those nice sugary, heavy carb, some heavy fat, dishes that are going to be on those menus?
Well, if it is a buffet, always have a drink in one hand, even water or coffee in one hand, and the plate in the other. And so it's tough to eat and drink at the same time, if you will. If it's or keep a hand free to shake hands, to bump, if you're a fist bump or whatever. If it is a sit-down dinner, it is to make sure you taste everything, but only taste everything. That is, you make sure you have very small portions, and as my daughter says, is make sure there's space between each item and the next item on your plate.
Oh, good advice. What is that space? That means you're getting less food on the plate, right?
That's exactly right. So you don't want to heap up the plate. You want to keep space there so that you have some discipline. And then think about 4 non-political conversations you want to have.
You don't want to have those political conversations. That can make dinner really uncomfortable. Finally, Dr. Roizen, COVID. We're hearing so many parts of the country increase in COVID, but I've been traveling. No one's wearing a mask. It's amazing, isn't it?
Amazing. We went to the basketball game last night. My wife and I are season ticket holders for the Cavs ever since LeBron came to town, and we were the only ones in line with masks on. Now we don't when we're in the stadium separated from people, we don't wear masks. But in the line to get into the stadium and until we get to our seats, we wore masks. And we literally, there were maybe 3 or 4 other people in the whole line wearing a mask. mask. So I can only do what's good for me. I can't tell other people what to do. I can suggest it as in my role with you, for example, but wearing a mask when you're in and going to get a lot of exposures, like in a line and like on an airplane, you're pretty intense exposures to those people on an airplane. So I do wear the mask getting into the airplane and on the airplane as well. But you have to you pick what you're willing to risk, because I get to see young kids, grandkids, as well as some old people, as well as a whole bunch of patients who are immunocompromised. I try and keep as healthy as possible.
That's great advice. Well, always a pleasure to see you, Dr. Roizen. Good luck with the recovery on your shoulder. I know you said you have one of the top surgeons in the country that did the operation. You said you're going to be a good patient. You're going to follow that doctor's orders.
I want to say one more thing people should ask for. I started the acute pain practice here. As you know, I'm both an anesthesiologist and an internist, and I ran anesthesia, critical care, pain management, as well as executive health here when I came here. And we started a pain service, and they put in a catheter that dripped local anesthetic on the nerves that innervate the shoulder. I had no pain for 6 days. People said this was going to be horrible. I had zero pain. So I'm going to tell people, ask for a regional anesthetic drip if they're going to get shoulder or knee surgery, because it is remarkably different if you don't have pain.
No, that's a great point. Thank you for sharing. And finally, that flu shot, which are we past the season where you can get a flu shot?
No, you can remember it. No, the biggest. We always expect that the biggest amount of flu will come between January 20th and February 20th. And so getting the flu shot now is perfect if that's when it comes. It builds over 2 to 3 weeks, the immunity. So getting it now, that's a great gift to give your family. Prance to the nearest, if you will, Walgreens or CVS or Rite Aid or whatever you've got in your neighborhood. And especially independents if they're there, to get your flu shot.
And I assume you got your fourth booster, or your fourth shot. Maybe it's your second booster.
I think I've gotten 5, Areva. So, yes.
I know I've kind of lost count of all these shots, but you are a firm believer in getting every booster that comes out for COVID.
Yeah, I'm going to give you one piece of what I call horrible news. A third of parents are now saying that their kids shouldn't be mandated to have vaccines. Dr. Oz and I we interviewed 178 people on every side of the vaccine controversy, and it's a 40,000 to 1 benefit to risk. What do I mean by that? Getting the childhood immunizations for your child is like putting $1 down and willing to risk losing the dollar. Flu vaccines, all the vaccines, they're not 100% safe. There is a risk you could lose that $1, but you're betting the $1 to get 40,000 back. So whatever you do is make sure your kids and you get your immunizations. They do have risk, but the benefit is huge compared to the risk.
Wow. Great advice, Dr. Roizen. Have a wonderful, wonderful holiday. Again, a speedy recovery with respect to the shoulder. And we'll see you soon, my 76-year-old, 40-year-old friend.
Thank you. Privilege.
Bye-bye. My next guest is Peter Greenberg. He has a show on PBS called The Travel Detective, and he is America's travel expert. Good morning, Peter, and thank you so much for joining. Holiday season, and we're already getting some reports that the Midwest, particularly places like Chicago, St. Louis, they are bracing themselves for some big storm. What is that going to do for those folks who thought they'd be able to jump on the road or maybe travel right before Christmas?
Well, let's start with some good news first, and that is because Christmas and New Year's both fall on a Sunday, a lot of Americans already figured out a way to stagger their departure dates and their return dates. They've already left. They're all gone already. So for the last minute, folks, now you've got a problem. Right now, the weather forecasting is showing 3 to 6 inches of snow in Chicago for Thursday and 9 to 12 inches. Get ready for that on Friday. And when you have something like that coming in, you're going to see the airlines doing preemptive cancellations. They're not even going to leave their planes on the ground, though. They're going to get them out. That'll slow you down between 36 and 72 hours to get back on track. If you're on the road, you have the similar problem. If you don't leave now and you're going through the Midwest, you'll be in the Midwest, whether you like it or not, but you won't be leaving the Midwest.
Wow. So drop everything and jump on your car or run to the airport. What happens in a snowstorm for drivers? Do they have to just pull over and pull into your local hotel, motel?
Well, it's more than just pulling over. It's being smarter than that. If you know the storm is coming, why would you get on the road in the first place? That's where you have pileups of massive proportions, and there are not a lot of accommodations available out there so you can even reach them. Remember, you got to get off the road to get on another road. So the bottom line here is be prudent. If you're flying by air, wait for the airlines to offer waivers so that you can rebook without penalty. You may not get to where you're going when you want to get there, but you won't be spending the night at an airport. And if you're driving, don't leave until you look at the bigger picture, meaning get on an app like Dark Sky or some of the other weather apps, and you can actually see things in real time so that you can plan appropriately.
Wow. Oh, okay. Those folks that maybe were planning to get on the road headed through the Midwest, got to rethink that, because that storm, as you said, on Friday in particular, is going to be pretty nasty. Are there any other places other than Midwest, Peter, that people should pretty much avoid traveling to, whether because it's weather or maybe unsafe? Any other destinations we should be talking about?
Well, it's not exactly a news bulletin that it's winter. And if it's in the East Coast, weather is always the intangible. It can change rapidly. Again, a lot of people got smart this year, left early, were working remotely so they can come back later. They're not racing to get anywhere, nor should they. So I think we'll be in better shape this year, even with weather, than we have been in years past.
Are you finding, Peter, that more people are on planes? Last couple of years with COVID, we saw a really decrease in the number of people flying, but is flying back up to its regular status?
It's about as close to 2019 levels as you can get. Plus, airlines are flying about 10% fewer flights. That's one of the other reasons why all the planes are full. So yeah, the planes are full. They're getting their schedule back in a different way. Because they're flying fewer flights, they can spread them out. So you have a somewhat percentage drop in cancellations and delays. It's still there because weather's going to be a factor, but the numbers are back.
So it's much better now than we saw in the summer, right? In summer, we saw people stranded at airports and sleeping on floors. What has changed to make it at least more likely that your plane is not going to get canceled?
Well, the staffing levels are getting better. That's the key. The airlines were understaffed on all levels, not just pilots, but the people who work below the wing, the baggage loaders, the rampers, the fuelers. They're now hiring very aggressively across the board. They're not where they need to be yet, but they're making improvements on the numbers. And because of that, they can get a better grasp on their schedule.
And are we paying for that, Peter? I feel like flights now are terribly expensive. The flight I used to take that was $400 is now $700.
Well, we're not just paying for it, we're mortgaging on it because the demand is so strong that people have been flying and they haven't been price sensitive. You might be, I might be, but the numbers reflect that people will fly right now at any cost. Think about this. You can get a round trip ticket from New York to Paris in the last couple of weeks for about $370. A round trip ticket from New York to Madison, Wisconsin was $1,000. And guess what? The planes were full. So people either had a lot of savings that they were spending on travel, or in addition to that, they made a choice. They made a choice of saying, okay, I'm going to buy experience. I'm not buying material goods, which may be reflected in the Christmas shopping sales reports coming up. They're not necessarily buying luxury items, electronics, appliances, cars, clothing, jewelry, but they haven't stopped buying travel.
Any tips, Peter? I feel like, years gone by, there were ways that you could certain days of the week you could fly, certain hours of the day, and you could get cheaper flights. Any tips on how to save money with flights? And then we're going to talk about these hotel rates because they are astronomical too.
Well,
but what about tips for travel?
Well, airline fares right now are 37% higher than they were in 2019, and hotel rates are 40% higher on average than they were in 2019. About the day of the week, it used to be Tuesday night at midnight. Throw that out. That doesn't work anymore. Now it's Sunday. Anytime on Sundays when you want to check out to see if fares have come down and you can lock it in. But the real problem right now is trying to project demand moving beyond January. Normally at this time of the year, with the exception of Christmas, it's dead. Well, guess what? It's not dead. It's being driven by leisure travel because people are still spending money. Because also during the pandemic, they received so many solicitations for credit cards and they took them up on it. In fact, they did it ignoring the idea that interest rates on some of these cards is as high as 28%, and that's compounded interest. Sooner or later, that bill's coming in. But until it does, as a general rule right now, we're traveling and we're not being price sensitive.
So what about those hotels, Peter? So I can understand the airlines, the shortage of staff. They can't fly a plane without everybody behind the plane and on the plane. But why 40% increase in hotel rooms?
Well, remember, the fact that hotels are full doesn't mean they've sold every room. They still have a staff shortage. So you have a lot of hotels that are full, but they've capped their occupancy at 70%. And as a result, they're raising rates because they can and because we're paying them. And they're providing fewer services. You're not necessarily going to see housekeeping every day. You're not necessarily going to see a restaurant or room service or dry cleaning or some of the other services that you come to expect at a hotel. Or you're going to see resort fees kick in that'll add another $40 a night to your room rate over and above the rate of the room itself. So these are things that are going to be with us for a while. And that's regardless of business travel coming back. It's about occupancy and staff shortages that are still rampant in the hotel business.
Wow. Well, just looking ahead, Peter, to summer, any places, any destinations we should not go to, like Russia, like any other countries that may be problematic? Like once you get there, you may not be coming home. Anything we should be thinking about?
Well, I would never say once you get there, you may not be coming home. That's very bad branding. But forgetting that, let me tell you the places you can go this summer where you can actually maintain control of your wallet. It's the power of the U.S. dollar over foreign currencies. We're at an all-time high against many foreign currencies like the euro, the British pound, the Turkish lira, the South African rand, the Argentinian peso. These are true buyers' markets. You can adjust airline fares. We've seen that. You can adjust hotel fares, but you cannot adjust the cost of basic goods and services that the locals pay. And if you devalued the Turkish lira about 7 times in the last 3 years, it is a true buyer's market, which represents a cost savings on anything you're going to do when you're there of between 30 and 40%. That's significant.
Wow. Well, lots of places to visit over the summer as we start to planning ahead. And I assume it still makes sense, even though we can't necessarily get the cheaper prices we were used to before 2019. But I would imagine you would still say plan ahead for your travel, both air, car, train, and hotel, that there's some benefits to advanced planning?
If you're planning ahead on dates that are busy times, like Memorial Day weekend or July 4th or Labor Day or President's Day weekend, you of course it's in your best interest to plan ahead. But if you want to just plan to go somewhere this coming summer, then you want to look between 45 and 60 days out. That's when you want to book. Because the airlines' algorithms that allow them to project demand and set prices, they threw them out the window during the pandemic because they no longer work. So it's a much more close-in booking situation. It's a much more fluid situation. So you should react accordingly.
And last question, Peter, about travel insurance. I've purchased it before and then had to cancel a flight, and I get zero because there were so many exceptions that I hadn't read the little fine print on. But what's your take on travel insurance?
Well, we can do a half-hour special on that. The problem is Most people make their reservations online. And if you're going to make an airline reservation, what happens? You can't complete the transaction unless you either opt in or opt out of the insurance. My suggestion is, and by the way, I'm a big fan of the right kind of insurance, but my suggestion is opt out of it online, call a travel agent or a travel advisor, have a conversation, find out what kind of coverage you need and what kind of policy is actually going to cover you. Because what people found out during the pandemic, as you did as well, what you thought you did with the best of intentions, there are so many exclusions you weren't covered. You need to be protected. You need to have a conversation, and you can't do that online.
Great advice. Yeah, I spent days fighting with this insurance company over this insurance only to have it fail and just to become anti-travel insurance. But thank you for that tip that I needed to have called someone, got a better understanding about what the policy provided for that I was purchasing, and then make an informed decision about whether, it was best in my circumstances. But yeah, don't just check the box online like I did, because it doesn't work. Thank you, Peter. Safe travels to you. Happy holidays, and thanks for joining us.
Right back at you. See you next year.
All right. Bye-bye. I want to thank Dr. Roizen, my good friend. Yes, and Dr. Roizen is 76 years old, in case you missed that. He's 76. To me, he doesn't look a day over 55, maybe 58, but my goodness, he is so youthful, so full of energy, and I think he follows the advice that he often gives us on this show. I also want to thank the travel expert. Make sure you are following him. He has a fantastic show that's on Amazon, and you learn everything you need to know about travel. So for those of you who are getting either in your cars or you're getting on airplanes or trains or buses during this holiday season, you want to make sure you are ready for holiday travel. But I think the most important thing we can give ourselves and give our family and friends during this holiday is the gift of health. So make sure you follow Dr. Roizen's 4 Ps. You don't have to wait until 2023 to start prancing after dinner, to start contacting those friends and family members. He says he does it twice a week to let people know that he loves them. Finding more entertainment and more social time in our schedules. And finally, as he said, getting more protein. And yes, you can get protein even when you are on a plant-based diet. I follow a diet very similar to Dr. Roizen's, mostly plant-based. Well, it's all vegetarian, but it's kind of even vegan with a little fish every now and then. So find that diet that works best for you, but most importantly, follow those 4 Ps. And you too will be looking like you're 50 when you are in your late 70s. Be safe out there. Remember, we're all in this together.